One of the many questions every gardener has about growing a garden is when to harvest. Today I'm going to give you some hints about when the perfect time to harvest your potatoes are from your garden. But first, make sure you hit that like button and also hit the subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed to this channel. All right, as I'm strolling through my garden, some of my potatoes are ready to harvest, but that's one of the tricky things. How can you tell when your potatoes are ready to harvest? All right, so let's take a look. In my garden, I have 4 different types of potatoes. I grow in raised beds. This bed is 12 feet by 2 feet. This particular variety of potatoes is still nice and green. So how can, what's an easy way to tell if these potatoes are ready? First of all, you will want to find out what variety you have. This particular one is a russet variety called Norcota russet. And on this tag that I've used to mark my potatoes, I've indicated that it's a 95 to 110 day potato. That's how long it takes usually from when the time you planted the seeds or the tubers to the time that those potatoes will be ready to harvest. Now, I happen to plant my potatoes. This is the earliest I've planted them in a long time. I planted my potatoes on April 20th. Now you can see by the looks of this set of potatoes, and this potato is, the dark red Norland, and it's an early variety. It's a 70 to 80 day potato. The trellis right behind it is, I plant peas with my early potatoes, so I can have peas and potatoes when they come on. This particular variety right back here, still fairly green. As you can see, the sun is giving it a gold cast to it, but you can still see that it is nice and green. There are some plants that are starting to die, which is an indicator that the plants are mature, or the tubers are mature, ready to harvest. This particular variety is called Purple Viking, and it is a 80 to 100 day time frame. And so then I have one more variety. And this one has pretty much died out too. This particular variety is actually one of my favorites. It's a yellow fleshed one called Huckleberry Gold, and it's a 90 day potato. Since I planted my potatoes on April 20th and it's August 20th, it's 5 months. So all my potatoes are ready to harvest if I really wanted to. But with these potatoes, with them still being green and nice and healthy, I'm going to let these particular potatoes mature for probably another week before I'm ready to harvest these. With the Huckleberry Golds, the Red Norlands, and the Purple Vikings, I'm going to go ahead and dig those up. Excuse the weeds as I look at them, but you can see how the plant tissue has died. This is for sure ready to, there's not going to be any more maturity on these plants, so I might as well start to harvest this. So this soil is so loose. I've created over the years the organic matter and such to build up the soil to where it's really loose. A lot different than planting in the ground, and that's one of the things I really like about planting in a raised bed or in a box, is because you can have a very loose soil and the potatoes don't get gnarly growing and such because of all the rocks or the heavy soils. Now, one way that you can do for this to know where your plants are is just go ahead and just pull up the plants themselves. This is actually the potato seed that I planted way back in April. As you can see, it's decomposed, it's rotted, but it has sent out so many different new starts on potatoes. So this is great. So I'm just going to set all of this aside Oh, there's pulling up that potato. You can see some of the potatoes that came off that plant. So I'm just at first going to clean off the plant material, then I'll start digging, and away we go. In digging up with the fork, every once in a while you'll run into casualties, and as you can see, I've did some casualties here on these Huckleberry Gold. But what I will do with all the potatoes once I get them dug, I will set them out. Before I put them into storage, I will set them out, allowing them to cure. That means the outer skins will dry. I'll expose them. I'll keep them on a table in the garage, so they're not in the sunlight, because sunlight the flesh will start turning green. It's just something you don't want potatoes to be in, is sunlight. And so I'll let them cure for a couple of days, and then I'll keep them in these boxes that I have, these totes, and then I will put them in. Now, this Huckleberry Gold, since I've damaged these two, I'm going to cut this open and show you why it's called Huckleberry Gold. You've all heard of the Yukon Gold, a gold flesh potato. This is actually my favorite yellow flesh potato, Huckleberry Gold. It's delicious, it's small, it doesn't get the calloused skins that Yukon Golds have a tendency to do. And so, but a wonderful, wonderful potato. And this potato is on the later side, about 90 days. So as I said, from when I planted these, we've exceeded that 90 days quite readily. So on to the next. Okay, hi. These are the Norcota russet potatoes. Even though they have been in the ground long enough, I'm going to allow them to, since the foliage is still nice and green, I'm going to let them grow for another week, maybe 10 days, and see if we can grow on the potatoes. But I want to show you, I'm going to dig first couple of plants right here to show you how big the russets are getting. All right, so with these russets, I just pulled up the plants. You can see prolific harvest on these, but they're on the smaller side. But Norcota is a smaller russet potato versus some of the other varieties like Ranger or the good old normal Idaho russet. But I'm going to allow these to continue to grow. But just in this one plant, you can see that was the original seed potato that I planted back in April, that sent up all of these shoots, and then allowed the roots to grow from there too. So this will also be a great harvest here in a couple of weeks. So I'm fighting the daylight hours. I'm just combing through the soil to make sure I get all of the russets that have grown. It looks like I have. Now there's one from this plant. Might as well just go ahead and get that one ready too. Now that's the beginning of a nice baker. All right, now what I'll do with these potatoes is I need to let them cure. I need to allow them to dry out from being in the soil. They're still moist on the skin, so allowing them to cure. Like in the garage, you don't want to expose them to any more sunlight than you have to. So in the garage, if it stays dark, allowing them to just cure and dry, that will allow the skin to harden off and to seal in the moisture. If you are storing your potatoes, you don't want to wash the dirt off of them. Let the dirt naturally dry on the skin, and then after a couple of days, you can just gently rub off that dry dirt, and they will be perfect for storing. And if you have a cool, dark space, you will be able to keep your varieties of potatoes all winter long. I've been fortunate enough to, in the past, be using some of my potatoes that I've harvested all the way into February and March without them sprouting or growing. I just have this great storage area that keeps them at a moderate temperature, doesn't expose them to sunlight, and it keeps them cool. Now, one thing about potatoes as you set them out to cure, another thing that will help you determine is, like on these Norland potatoes, they grow fairly shallow, and so I didn't cover them anymore throughout the season with dirt, and so you can see this sun scald that's on them. That will usually start turning the flesh green, and those are potatoes you don't want to keep. So you'll be able to tell that when you are drying and curing your potatoes before you store them. Now, on this Huckleberry Gold, I did have the accident with the digging fork, and that's a potato that you don't want to store also. You'll be able to see that that one would start rotting in the potato, and once potatoes start rotting, that deterioration can actually start affecting your whole bin. So you want to make sure that you remove any damaged potatoes before you store them. All right, hopefully this has been helpful in helping you determine when a good time to harvest your potatoes. Always check the dates. You know, once you've exceeded the dates of how long those potatoes are growing, you're fine in harvesting. Depending on if you want nice, young, fresh potatoes, like, you know, I plant an early crop, my Norlands, because they're the earliest, with peas. So then when my peas are ready, I know my potatoes are ready for those small little seedling potatoes, about little smaller than a golf ball, bigger than a marble, but makes great creamed peas and potato for an early summer dinner entree. With potatoes, the purple Viking, the wonderful white flesh, one of my favorites. And then of course the russets for baking and for pot roasts. So each potato has a different use. What are some of the potatoes that you grow in your garden? Do you have a particular one, or do you just settle for store-bought potatoes that are sometimes a year old once you get them out of the grocery store? If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. I love to hear comments and see where you're from and what potatoes you're growing, or actually what you're growing in your garden. If you have a particular type of favorite potato that you like to grow, tell me the variety. There's hundreds of varieties out there. And so until next time, this is Gary with Successful Gardens. And remember, let's get growing.